My brother's toxic girlfriend framed me as a drug dealer and got me arrested. I lost everything, including my family's trust. 3 weeks later, she confessed the shocking truth to save herself from prison. I, 21M, need to get this off my chest because my life has completely fallen apart in the past month. My younger brother Willis, 19M, has always been the golden child in our family, but what he did to me is beyond anything I could have imagined. Let's first understand our family dynamics. Our parents divorced when I was 12 and Willis was 10. Our dad moved across the country for work, so we only see him during holidays. Our mom Elena, 45F, works 2 jobs to support us. She's a nurse at the local hospital during the day and cleans offices at night. She's always exhausted, which meant Willis and I had to rely on each other growing up. The thing about our mom is that she's always been really hard on both of us academically. She immigrated here from Colombia when she was young and never got to finish college because she had me so early. She's constantly telling us that education is the only way to make something of ourselves. Willis has always been naturally smart, straight A student, honor roll, the works. I had to work twice as hard to get decent grades, and even then I was usually pulling B's and C's. Because of this, Willis became mom's obvious favorite. She would brag about him to her friends, put his report cards on the fridge, and always use him as an example when lecturing me about my grades. It stung, but I understood. Willis was genuinely brilliant, and mom was proud. I figured that was just how things were. Despite this favoritism, Willis and I were actually really close. We shared a room until I turned 18, and we had this unspoken understanding that we were a team against the world. When mom was working late, we'd order pizza and stay up playing video games. When she was stressed about money, we'd both chip in from our part-time jobs without her asking. Willis would help me with homework, and I'd drive him places since he didn't have his license yet. The problem started about 6 months ago when Willis started dating this girl Maggie, 18F, from his high school. She's one of those popular, pretty girls who's used to getting attention. Willis was completely smitten with her from day one. He'd spend hours on the phone with her, skip our usual hangout sessions, and basically revolve his entire schedule around her availability. I didn't mind at first. Willis had never really had a serious girlfriend before, so I figured he was just going through that honeymoon phase. But Maggie started coming around to our house more often, and I began to notice some things about her that bothered me. She had this way of talking down to people that she thought were beneath her. She'd make little comments about our house being small, or about how mom always looked tired. She'd roll her eyes when mom would try to make conversation with her in broken English. Willis never seemed to notice these things, or maybe he chose to ignore them. The real issue started when Maggie began spending time at our house while Willis was at work. He had a job at the local grocery store 3 afternoons a week, and she'd sometimes show up when only I was home. At first, she'd just wait in Willis's room, but then she started hanging out in the living room with me. I'll admit, Maggie is attractive, and she knew it. She'd wear these low-cut tops and short shorts, and she'd sit really close to me on the couch when we were watching TV. She'd laugh at everything I said, even when I wasn't trying to be funny. She'd touch my arm when she talked to me and complain about how Willis was always busy with work or school. I knew what was happening, but I tried to keep my distance. Willis was my brother, and I wasn't about to mess that up for some girl, no matter how pretty she was. But Maggie was persistent. She started texting me, asking if I was home before she'd come over. She'd bring me food from the places she went to with Willis. She'd ask me for advice about their relationship, which felt like some kind of trap. The breaking point came about 2 months ago. Willis was working a double shift at the store, and Maggie showed up at our house around 8 p.m. Mom was working her night job, so it was just me and her. She said she was bored and wanted to hang out. We ended up watching a movie, and she kept inching closer to me on the couch. Near the end of the movie, she straight up asked me if I found her attractive. I told her she was pretty but that she was my brother's girlfriend and I wasn't interested in going down that road. She laughed and said Willis didn't have to know everything. Then she kissed me. I pushed her away immediately and told her to leave. She got upset and said I was rejecting her because I thought I was too good for her. I explained that it had nothing to do with that, I just wasn't going to betray my brother. She left angry, and I hoped that would be the end of it. But Maggie started acting weird around me after that. When she'd come over with Willis, she'd barely acknowledge me. She'd whisper things to Willis that would make him look at me strangely. She started posting these cryptic things on social media about people not being who they seem and how some people can't be trusted. Willis began treating me differently too. He stopped asking me to hang out. He'd give me short answers when I tried to talk to him. When I asked him what was wrong, he'd say nothing, but I could tell something was bothering him. 3 weeks ago, everything exploded. I was at my part-time job at the auto shop when my phone started buzzing with calls and texts. My mom was frantically calling me, and Willis had sent me several angry messages. Mom's text said I needed to come home immediately because the police were at our house. I drove home as fast as I could, and when I pulled into our driveway, there were 2 police cars parked outside. My mom was crying on the front porch, and Willis was standing next to her with his arms crossed. The officers were coming out of our house carrying several plastic bags. One of the officers approached me and asked for my ID. He told me they had received an anonymous tip that I was selling drugs out of our house and that they had found marijuana and prescription pills in my bedroom. I was completely shocked. I told them I had no idea how those drugs got there, but they said they had to take me in for questioning. At the police station, they told me that someone had called in a tip claiming they had bought drugs from me multiple times. The caller provided specific details about our house layout and said I kept my stash hidden in a shoebox under my bed. When they searched that exact location, they found a bag of weed and about 20 pills that turned out to be stolen prescription painkillers. I kept insisting that I had never seen those drugs before in my life. I don't even smoke weed. I've always been afraid it would affect my ability to keep my job at the auto shop. But the evidence was right there, exactly where the anonymous caller said it would be. The worst part was when my mom and Willis came to pick me up after I was released on bail. Mom wouldn't even look at me. Willis sat in the back seat and stared out the window the entire ride home. When we got to the house, Mom told me I had 24 hours to find somewhere else to live. I tried to explain to both of them that I was innocent, but Mom said the drugs were found in my room and that was enough for her. Willis just shook his head and said he was disappointed in me for lying about it. He said Maggie had warned him that I was acting strange lately and that she suspected I might be using drugs. That's when it clicked. Maggie had been in our house alone multiple times. She knew the layout. She had access to my room. And now she was conveniently providing commentary about my suspicious behavior. I confronted Willis about Maggie, but he got furious. He said I was trying to blame his girlfriend for my own mistakes. He said Maggie had been nothing but nice to me and that I was ungrateful. Mom agreed with him and said I was being manipulated by trying to shift blame onto an innocent girl. I packed my stuff and left that night. I've been staying at my friend Dave's place, sleeping on his couch. The criminal charges are still pending, and I had to use my savings to hire a lawyer. My mom won't return my calls, and Willis blocked me on all social media. The thing that kills me is that I can't prove Maggie planted those drugs. I can't prove she made that anonymous call. All I have is my suspicion and the fact that she had access to my room. But Willis is so blinded by his feelings for her that he won't even consider the possibility. I found out from Dave, who still talks to Willis occasionally, that Maggie has moved on to consoling Willis about having such a disappointing brother. She's been staying at our house more often, helping Mom with household chores, and basically positioning herself as the perfect girlfriend who's supporting the family through this difficult time. Meanwhile, my life is completely destroyed. I might go to jail. I've lost my family. My reputation in our small town is ruined. And the person I suspect is responsible for all of this is being treated like a saint. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to keep fighting to prove my innocence, but another part of me thinks maybe I should just cut my losses and start over somewhere else. Has anyone else ever been in a situation where someone close to them was manipulated by a toxic person? How do you prove something when you have no evidence? Update 1. I can't believe I'm back here with an update, but something happened that changes everything. For those who didn't read my original post, my brother Willis's girlfriend Maggie basically destroyed my life by planting drugs in my room and calling in an anonymous tip to the police. I've been staying on my friend Dave's couch ever since my mom kicked me out. The past 3 weeks have been hell. My lawyer said the case against me is pretty strong because the drugs were found exactly where the anonymous caller said they would be. The prosecutor is offering me a plea deal, admit guilt and get probation instead of possible jail time. My lawyer advised me to take it, but I refused because I'm innocent. Dave has been great about letting me stay with him, but I could tell it was putting a strain on his relationship with his girlfriend Melissa. They'd have these hushed conversations in the kitchen that would stop when I walked in. Last week, Melissa finally told me I could stay 2 more weeks max because they needed their space back. I understood, but it meant I was running out of options fast. I started looking for apartments I could afford on my auto shop salary, but most places wanted first month, last month, and a security deposit up front. With my legal fees, I barely had enough for 1 month's rent, let alone 3. I was seriously considering just packing up my car and driving to another state to start over. But then something happened that I never expected. Last Tuesday, I was working late at the auto shop when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer it. The voice on the other end was Maggie's. She sounded different, shaky, nervous. She asked if we could meet somewhere to talk. I told her I had nothing to say to her, especially since she had convinced my brother and mom that I was some kind of drug dealer. She said she needed to tell me something important about what really happened. My first instinct was to hang up, but curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to meet her at a 24-hour diner across town where no one we knew would see us. She said she'd be there in an hour. When I got to the diner, Maggie was already sitting in a back booth with a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. She looked terrible, her hair was messy, she had dark circles under her eyes, and her hands were shaking. This was not the confident, manipulative girl I remembered. She started talking before I even sat down. She told me that Willis had proposed to her the night before. Not just proposed, he had this whole elaborate plan to propose at graduation in front of both families. He had spent his entire savings on a ring and was talking about them moving in together after high school. Maggie said she panicked when he proposed. She realized she didn't actually want to marry Willis or spend her life in our small town. She had only been dating him because he was smart and she thought it made her look good. But the idea of being tied down to him forever terrified her. Then she started crying and said she needed to tell me the truth about what happened. She admitted that she had planted the drugs in my room. She said she stole them from her mom's medicine cabinet and bought the weed from some kid at school. She made the anonymous call to the police because she wanted me out of the picture. I asked her why she would do something so extreme just to get rid of me. She said it wasn't really about me at all. She knew that if Willis's family fell apart, he would need to focus on taking care of his mom instead of planning their future together. She thought if I was arrested and kicked out, it would create enough family drama that Willis would be too distracted to think about marriage. She also admitted that she had lied to Willis about me coming on to her. She said she told him I had tried to kiss her and that I was always making inappropriate comments when he wasn't around. She wanted him to distrust me so that when the drug thing happened, he wouldn't question it. I sat there listening to this confession in complete shock. This girl had destroyed my life as part of some elaborate plan to avoid marrying my brother. I asked her why she was telling me this now. She said Willis had been talking about the wedding nonstop since he proposed, and the guilt was eating her alive. She also said her mom had noticed the missing pills and was threatening to call the police if Maggie didn't confess to taking them. She was scared she was going to get arrested herself. I asked her if she would be willing to admit the truth to Willis and my mom. She said she would, but she wanted something in return. She wanted me to help convince Willis not to hate her when the truth came out. She said she really did care about him and didn't want him to think she was a monster. I almost laughed at the audacity of her request. She had literally tried to send me to prison, destroyed my relationship with my family, and cost me thousands of dollars in legal fees. And now she wanted me to help manage her breakup with my brother. But then I realized this was my chance to get my life back. I told her I would consider helping her smooth things over with Willis, but first she had to go to the police and confess to planting the drugs. I also wanted her to tell my mom and Willis the truth in person, not over the phone. She agreed to meet me at the police station the next day. I didn't trust her, so I insisted on picking her up myself to make sure she actually showed up. The next morning, I drove to Maggie's house. She was waiting outside with a small bag, and she looked like she hadn't slept all night. On the way to the police station, she kept asking me what I thought Willis would do when he found out. I told her honestly that he would probably never forgive her, but that was the consequence of her choices. At the police station, Maggie asked to speak with the detective who had handled my case. She confessed to planting the drugs and making the false report. The detective had her write out a full statement and sign it. He told me that the charges against me would be dropped within a few days. After we left the police station, Maggie asked if we could go talk to my mom and Willis together. I called my mom and told her I was coming over with Maggie and that she needed to hear something important. Mom sounded confused but agreed to let us come over. When we got to my house, Willis and Mom were both sitting at the kitchen table waiting for us. Willis looked angry to see me, and Mom just looked tired. Maggie sat down across from them and told them everything: the drugs, the anonymous call, the lies about me making advances on her, all of it. Willis's face went through about 5 different emotions as Maggie talked. First confusion, then disbelief, then anger, then hurt, and finally this blank expression like he was shutting down. Mom just kept shaking her head and saying she couldn't believe it. When Maggie finished talking, Willis asked her why she would do something so horrible to his family. She tried to explain about feeling trapped and not wanting to get married, but he cut her off. He told her to leave and never contact him again. After Maggie left, Mom hugged me and apologized for not believing me. She said she felt terrible for kicking me out and that I could move back home immediately. Willis apologized too, but I could tell he was more angry at himself for being fooled than sorry for doubting me. I moved back home that weekend. The charges were officially dropped, and my lawyer said I might be able to recover some of my legal fees from Maggie's family. Willis broke up with Maggie obviously, and he threw himself into his schoolwork to avoid dealing with his feelings. But here's the thing, even though the truth is out and my name is cleared, things aren't back to normal. Willis barely talks to me. He's polite but distant, like he's embarrassed about the whole situation. Mom tries to act like everything is fine, but there's this awkwardness between us that wasn't there before. I think Willis feels stupid for being manipulated by Maggie, and seeing me reminds him of how badly he misjudged the situation. I also think he's processing the fact that his girlfriend was willing to destroy his family to avoid marrying him, which has to be pretty devastating for his self-esteem. Maggie has apparently left town. Willis heard from someone at school that she moved in with relatives in another state. I hope I never see her again, but part of me wonders if she'll try to cause more problems down the road. For now, I'm just trying to rebuild my life and my relationships with my family. It's going to take time, but at least the truth is finally out there. Update to another update because this situation somehow got even more complicated. For those just joining, my brother's ex-girlfriend Maggie framed me for drug dealing, I got arrested, my family disowned me, and then she eventually confessed the truth. I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. Things were slowly getting back to normal at home. Willis was still being weird around me, but Mom and I were rebuilding our relationship. I had been back home for about a month when something happened that changed everything again. I was working at the auto shop on a Saturday morning when this older woman came in asking for me specifically. She introduced herself as Patricia, Maggie's mom. I had never met her before, but I recognized her from some photos Maggie had shown us. Patricia looked really upset and asked if we could talk privately. My boss let me take a break, and we sat in her car outside the shop. She told me that Maggie had been lying about way more than just the drugs. According to Patricia, Maggie had been stealing from her for months before the incident with me happened. Money from her purse, prescription medications, even some of Patricia's jewelry had gone missing. Patricia had suspected Maggie but couldn't prove it until after Maggie confessed to the police about framing me. But that wasn't the worst part. Patricia said that after Maggie moved in with her relatives in Nevada, she started calling Patricia demanding money. Maggie claimed she was pregnant with Willis's baby and needed financial support. Patricia sent her $2,000 before she started getting suspicious and called the relatives Maggie was supposedly staying with. Turns out Maggie had never been pregnant. She had been using the money to party with new friends in Las Vegas. When Patricia confronted her about it, Maggie admitted the pregnancy was fake but said she deserved the money as compensation for having to leave her hometown because of the drama I had caused. Patricia was calling me because she thought I should know that Maggie was still lying about our family and trying to get money by using Willis's name. She also wanted to warn me that Maggie had been posting things on social media about how she was the real victim in our situation. I looked up Maggie's social media accounts that night, and Patricia was right. Maggie had reinvented the whole story online. According to her posts, I had been harassing her for months, making unwanted advances, and threatening her when she rejected me. She claimed she only lied to the police because she was scared of what I might do to her. She was positioning herself as a brave victim who had finally escaped an abusive situation. The posts had dozens of comments from people I didn't know, calling me all kinds of names and saying I should be in jail. Maggie had also posted photos of herself looking sad and vulnerable, with captions about starting over after surviving trauma. I screenshot everything and showed it to Willis. He was furious when he saw what Maggie was posting. He had been avoiding social media since their breakup, so he had no idea she was still spreading lies about our family. Willis decided to call Maggie directly to confront her about the fake pregnancy story and the social media posts. I was there when he made the call, and he put it on speaker so I could hear. Maggie answered on the first ring, and her voice immediately got all sweet and emotional when she realized it was Willis. She told him she had been missing him terribly and that she had made a huge mistake by leaving town. She said she wanted to come back and work things out between them. Willis cut her off and asked her about the pregnancy claim and the money she had taken from her mom. Maggie got defensive and said Patricia was lying because she was angry about Maggie moving out. She insisted the pregnancy had been real but that she had miscarried shortly after moving to Nevada. Then Willis asked her about the social media posts. Maggie's tone completely changed. She got nasty and said she had every right to tell her side of the story. She said I had made her feel unsafe and that she was just warning other girls about my behavior. Willis told her she was delusional and that he never wanted to hear from her again. Maggie started crying and begging him not to hang up. She said she would stop posting about me if he would just talk to her about getting back together. Willis told her she was sick and hung up. But the damage was already done. Maggie's social media posts were being shared by people from our town, and the story was spreading. I started getting weird looks at work and around town from people who believed Maggie's version of events. My boss at the auto shop called me into his office the next week. He said some customers had been asking about me and that he was concerned about the shop's reputation. He didn't fire me, but he made it clear that if the drama continued to affect his business, he would have to let me go. That's when I decided I couldn't just ignore Maggie's lies anymore. I had kept quiet when she first confessed because I thought the truth would be enough, but she was still out there trying to destroy my reputation. I gathered all the evidence I had, screenshots of her posts, the police report where she confessed, Patricia's testimony about the stolen money and fake pregnancy, and I posted my own social media response explaining what really happened. I didn't attack Maggie personally or call her names. I just laid out the facts with documentation to back them up. I explained that she had admitted to planting drugs in my room, that she had lied to police, and that she was now spreading false information online. The response was immediate. People who knew me and my family started sharing my post and defending me in the comments. Some of Maggie's friends from school came forward with their own stories about times she had lied or manipulated situations for attention. But Maggie escalated things even further. She created a new social media account and started messaging my friends and coworkers directly, sending them fake screenshots of text conversations where I supposedly threatened her. The screenshots were obviously doctored, they had inconsistent formatting and some of the messages contained slang that I never use. One of Maggie's fake screenshots got sent to my mom's workplace. A coworker showed it to Mom, and Mom brought it home to ask me about it. The fake message allegedly showed me threatening to hurt Maggie if she ever came back to town. I showed Mom how the screenshot was fake by comparing it to real text conversations on my phone. The fonts were different, and the message timestamps didn't match up with when Maggie and I had actually exchanged texts. Mom believed me, but she was worried about how far Maggie was willing to go with her lies. That's when Willis suggested we talk to a lawyer about harassment charges against Maggie. He felt guilty that his ex-girlfriend was still trying to hurt our family even after the truth came out. We met with a lawyer last week who specializes in online harassment cases. She reviewed all the evidence and said we had a strong case against Maggie for defamation and cyberstalking. She also said Patricia could potentially press charges for theft and fraud related to the fake pregnancy money. The lawyer sent Maggie a cease and desist letter demanding that she stop posting false information about me and remove all existing posts. Maggie has not responded yet, but her social media accounts went private shortly after she would have received the letter. I'm hoping this finally ends Maggie's campaign against me, but I'm not holding my breath. She seems determined to paint herself as the victim no matter what evidence exists to the contrary. The good news is that Willis and I are finally talking normally again. Working together to deal with Maggie's harassment has helped repair our relationship. He apologized for ever doubting me and said he felt stupid for being fooled by someone so manipulative. Mom has been great through all of this. She feels terrible about how she treated me when I was first arrested, and she's been going out of her way to make up for it. She even offered to pay my legal fees for the harassment case. I'm just tired of dealing with Maggie's drama. All I want is for her to leave me and my family alone so we can move on with our lives. But it seems like every time I think it's over, she finds a new way to cause problems. Update 3. This is my final update because I think this situation has finally reached its conclusion. To recap for new readers, my brother's ex-girlfriend Maggie framed me for drug dealing, I was arrested, my family disowned me, she eventually confessed, and then she continued harassing me online with fake stories. We got a lawyer involved and sent her a cease and desist letter. The cease and desist letter worked, but not in the way we expected. Instead of just stopping her harassment, Maggie decided to escalate things one final time before disappearing from our lives completely. About 2 weeks after the lawyer sent the letter, Maggie's mom Patricia called me again. She sounded panicked and said Maggie had driven back to our town without telling anyone. Patricia had found out because Maggie's relatives in Nevada called looking for her. She had apparently stolen money and some valuables from them before leaving. Patricia was worried about what Maggie might do since she was clearly getting more desperate and reckless. She asked me to be careful and said she was driving to our town to try to find Maggie and bring her back. That same day, I got a call at work from Willis. He sounded shaken up and told me Maggie had shown up at his college campus. She had somehow figured out his class schedule and was waiting for him outside his chemistry lecture. When he tried to ignore her and walk away, she started yelling at him in front of other students. According to Willis, Maggie was rambling about how I had turned everyone against her and ruined her life. She blamed me for her family cutting her off, for having to leave town, and for not being able to come back. She demanded that Willis choose between supporting her or supporting me. Willis told her he would never choose her after everything she had done to our family. That's when Maggie pulled out her phone and started recording, claiming loudly that Willis was harassing her and that she felt unsafe. Other students started gathering around to see what was happening. Campus security eventually intervened and escorted Maggie off the property. They told Willis he could file a report if he wanted to, but he decided against it since he just wanted her to leave him alone. But Maggie wasn't done. That evening, she posted the video she had recorded on social media with a caption claiming Willis was part of a conspiracy with me to silence her. The video was edited to remove the context of what she had been yelling about, so it just showed Willis looking angry and telling her to leave him alone. This was Maggie's biggest mistake yet. Several students who had witnessed the actual confrontation saw the post and commented explaining what really happened. They described how Maggie had been the aggressor and how she had been yelling about me ruining her life. One student even had their own video of the incident from a different angle that showed Maggie's erratic behavior. When this video was shared, it completely contradicted Maggie's narrative and made her look unhinged. That night, Patricia found Maggie staying at a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. Maggie had been using fake social media accounts to monitor what was being said about her, and she was furious that her plan to make Willis look bad had backfired. Patricia convinced Maggie to meet with our lawyer to discuss resolving the situation without further legal action. I was skeptical, but the lawyer thought it was worth exploring since Maggie was clearly spiraling and might agree to terms that would end this permanently. The meeting took place a few days later in the lawyer's office. Maggie looked terrible, she had lost weight, her hair was greasy, and she kept fidgeting with her hands. Patricia sat next to her and did most of the talking at first. Our lawyer presented Maggie with two options. She could agree to sign a legally binding agreement promising to never contact me, Willis, or anyone in our family again, and to remove all false posts about me from social media. In exchange, we would not pursue criminal charges for her recent harassment. Or, if she refused, we would file charges for cyberstalking, defamation, and harassment, and Patricia would press charges for the theft and fraud related to the fake pregnancy money. Maggie initially tried to argue that she was the real victim and that we were bullying her. But when the lawyer showed her all the evidence we had compiled, the fake screenshots, the contradictory social media posts, the witness statements from Willis's campus incident, she finally seemed to understand how much trouble she was in. Patricia was crying during most of the meeting. She kept apologizing to us and saying she didn't know how to help her daughter anymore. She said Maggie had been exhibiting this kind of manipulative behavior since she was a teenager, but it had gotten much worse in the past year. After about an hour of discussion, Maggie agreed to sign the agreement. She would delete all social media posts about me, stop using fake accounts to monitor or contact anyone in our family, and leave town permanently. She also had to agree to seek mental health treatment, which Patricia insisted on including. The lawyer had Maggie write and sign a public apology post that she had to leave up on her social media for 30 days before deleting her accounts. The apology admitted that she had lied about me and that all her previous posts were false. Maggie was clearly humiliated by having to post the apology, but she did it. The post got a lot of attention from people in our town who had been following the drama. Many people commented expressing support for me and my family. Patricia took Maggie back to Nevada that same day. Before they left, Patricia gave me her phone number and said to call her if Maggie ever tried to contact us again. She also offered to pay for some of my legal expenses, which was nice of her. That was 2 months ago, and I haven't heard from Maggie since. Her social media accounts are all deleted, and Willis says none of his friends have seen or heard from her. I occasionally check to make sure she hasn't created new accounts to post about me, but so far everything has been quiet. My life has mostly returned to normal. I'm still working at the auto shop, and my boss seems satisfied that the drama is over. My relationship with Willis is better than it's been in years. Going through this situation together actually brought us closer. Mom has been great too. She still feels guilty about how she treated me when I was first arrested, but we've moved past it. She actually learned some things about online harassment from this experience, and now she's more careful about believing everything she sees on social media. The only lasting impact is that I'm much more cautious about who I trust. Maggie taught me that some people are willing to destroy innocent people's lives for the most selfish reasons. I'm not bitter about it, but I'm definitely more aware of red flags in people's behavior. I've also learned that sometimes the truth isn't enough. Even after Maggie confessed to framing me, she was still able to manipulate people online with fake stories. It took legal action and overwhelming evidence to finally stop her. Willis is dating someone new now, a girl named Sarah who seems genuinely nice and drama-free. He's taking things much slower this time and being more careful about introducing her to the family. I think the experience with Maggie taught him to look for character and integrity rather than just being impressed by someone's looks or popularity. As for Maggie, I hope she gets the help she needs and stops hurting people. But I also hope I never have to deal with her again. Some people are just toxic, and the best thing you can do is get them out of your life and keep them out. I'm grateful that my family stuck together in the end and that the truth eventually came out. It was a horrible experience, but it could have been much worse if Maggie had been smarter about covering her tracks or if my family hadn't been willing to listen when the evidence became clear. This whole situation taught me that family relationships can be fragile, but they can also be stronger than you think if everyone is willing to fight for them. Willis and I went through hell, but we came out closer on the other side. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My dad claimed he was too poor to help with my college. He was making me struggle through poverty but was secretly paying for my half-sister's private school and luxurious life. I, 28M, recently discovered something that completely destroyed my relationship with my father, and I need outside perspective on whether I'm handling this right. This is going to be long because there's a lot of background needed to understand everything. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old after my mom caught my dad cheating. I don't remember much about their marriage, but I do remember the fights and tension in the house before they split. Mom caught him with another woman at a hotel when she surprised him during one of his frequent business trips. She filed for divorce immediately and got full custody since Dad moved to another state for work opportunities right after. Growing up, Dad would visit maybe 3 to 4 times a year and call occasionally. He always had excuses for why he couldn't visit more. Work was busy, he was dealing with health issues, his car needed repairs, etc. He would send the required child support, but it was often late, and he frequently claimed he was struggling financially when Mom asked for help with extra expenses. Money was always tight in our house. Mom worked as a nurse and picked up extra shifts at a nursing home just to keep us afloat. I started working at the local grocery store when I was 16 to help with bills. I remember feeling so embarrassed having to wear second-hand clothes and not being able to join school activities that cost money. Meanwhile, Dad would sometimes send $50 for birthdays or Christmas but claim he couldn't help with bigger expenses like when I needed braces or when our heating broke one winter. I managed to put myself through community college while working full-time. I wanted to transfer to a 4-year university but couldn't afford it even with student loans. When I asked Dad for help with tuition, he sent a long email about his own financial struggles, medical bills, bad investments, supporting his elderly parents, and how sorry he was that he couldn't help more. I ended up getting an associate's degree and was lucky to land an entry-level IT job that paid decent money. Over the past few years, as I became more financially stable, I tried rebuilding a relationship with Dad. He had moved back to our state after supposedly retiring due to health issues, and we started meeting for dinner every few weeks. He seemed genuinely interested in my life and career, and I thought we were finally developing the father-son relationship I'd always wanted. He would talk about regretting not being around more when I was younger and wanting to make up for lost time. Everything changed 3 months ago. Dad got a new smartphone and asked for my help setting it up since I work in IT. While I was syncing his email accounts, I noticed several messages from a university's financial aid office about tuition payments. I didn't mean to snoop, but the amount mentioned was substantial and I was curious since Dad had always claimed to be struggling financially. When I opened the email, I discovered he had been paying full tuition at an expensive private university for someone named Lucia, 19F. There were multiple emails about payment plans, housing fees, and meal plans. Confused, I opened more emails and found earlier ones about high school tuition payments to a private prep school. As I dug deeper, the truth came out. Lucia was my half-sister, his daughter from another relationship. She was born just a year after my parents' divorce, meaning Dad had gotten another woman pregnant while still married to my mom. He had been fully supporting Lucia and her mother all these years while claiming he could barely afford child support for me. When I confronted him, he tried to deny it at first but finally admitted everything when I showed him the emails. The extent of his deception was staggering. Not only had he paid for Lucia's private school education since kindergarten, but also expensive extracurriculars like horseback riding lessons and summer camps abroad. She got a brand new car for her 16th birthday while I was taking the bus to work at her age. He had bought a house for her and her mother in an upscale neighborhood while my mom and I lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. What hurt most was learning that Lucia knew about me the whole time. Dad and her mother had told her she had a half-brother but instructed her to keep it secret. She and Dad had a full, normal father-daughter relationship. He attended her school events, took her on vacations, taught her to drive, while I barely saw him a few times a year. When I asked why he never told me about her, he claimed he was trying to protect me from being hurt and didn't want to complicate things with my mom. He tried justifying himself saying he did his best to support both families but had to prioritize certain things. I was too angry to listen to his excuses. I told him I never wanted to see or speak to him again and blocked his number. When I told my mom everything, she broke down crying. She revealed that Dad had spent years claiming he couldn't afford to pay more child support because of various financial hardships, all lies to hide the fact that he was supporting his other family in luxury. She's now talking to a lawyer about pursuing legal action for his years of deception about his finances. Some of my extended family members are saying I'm being too harsh. My aunt thinks I should try to forgive him since he's still my father and is getting older. Several cousins have suggested I should at least try to have a relationship with Lucia since she's innocent in all this. But I'm too hurt and angry to even consider it right now. Every time I think about all the years of struggling while he was giving her everything, it makes my blood boil. AITA for cutting him off completely? Part of me feels guilty for refusing to even hear him out, but another part feels like this betrayal is unforgivable. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if my anger is justified. Edit. Thank you everyone for the supportive comments. To clarify some questions that keep coming up, yes, I have documented proof of the tuition payments and other financial support through the emails and financial records. No, I haven't tried contacting Lucia directly yet. While I understand she didn't choose any of this, I'm not emotionally ready to open that door right now. Update 1: The situation has gotten even more complicated since my last post. After sharing what happened, several relatives started reaching out with their own revelations. Apparently, many of them had suspected something wasn't right with Dad's stories over the years but weren't completely sure. A couple of my cousins mentioned seeing Dad with a young woman at malls or restaurants over the years but assumed she was a friend's daughter or a relative they didn't know. The biggest revelation came from my Aunt Karen, Dad's sister. She called me crying last week and finally admitted she had known about Lucia the entire time. Not only did she know, but she had been actively involved in Lucia's life, attending her dance recitals, high school graduation, and family events. She even hosted birthday parties for Lucia at her house when I was younger, scheduling them carefully so I wouldn't find out. Karen showed me photos from these events, and it was gut-wrenching to see Dad being the perfect father to Lucia while I barely saw him. There were pictures of him teaching her to ride a bike, helping with science fair projects, and taking her on camping trips, all things I had wished for growing up. Karen said she kept quiet at Dad's insistence, claiming it was for the best to keep the families separate. She's now racked with guilt after seeing how much their deception hurt me. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. A few days after Karen's confession, I received a message through my cousin's Facebook account. It was from Lucia. She had somehow found my original Reddit post and recognized the situation. According to her, she had always known about me and had wanted to reach out for years, but Dad strictly forbade it. What she revealed next made everything even worse. Dad had apparently been telling her and her mom a completely different version of the story all these years. In his narrative, my mom and I had rejected any attempts at connection after the divorce. He claimed we wanted nothing to do with his new family and that I specifically had refused to meet Lucia multiple times. All lies, of course. I never even knew she existed until now. Lucia shared financial details that made my blood boil. Dad hadn't just paid for her education, he had bought her mom a $500,000 house in an upscale neighborhood when Lucia was born. He paid for yearly family vacations to Europe and Hawaii, bought them both new cars every few years, and even invested $200,000 to help her mom start a successful interior design business that now earns well into 6 figures. All of this happened during the same years he was claiming poverty to reduce his child support payments to my mom. The same years my mom had to declare bankruptcy due to medical bills after a car accident. The same time I was working at a grocery store instead of joining school sports because we couldn't afford the equipment. Finding out about this level of financial deception made me physically sick. Lucia sent me dozens of photos showing how involved Dad was in her life. There he was at every school play, every soccer game, which he coached, every father-daughter dance. They took annual father-daughter trips to Disney World, a place I had begged to visit as a kid but was told we couldn't afford. She had photos of elaborate birthday parties, Christmas mornings surrounded by expensive gifts, and family portraits that looked like something out of a magazine. She was horrified to learn about our struggles and how Dad had lied to everyone. She broke down in our messages, apologizing repeatedly for her unwitting part in the deception. She said she had always dreamed of having a brother and felt terrible about having everything handed to her while I struggled. After several long conversations through Facebook, she asked if we could meet in person. I was extremely conflicted about meeting her. Part of me was angry and jealous of the life she had, even though logically I knew none of it was her fault. But another part was curious about this sister I never knew I had. After thinking it over for a few days, I agreed to meet her for coffee, figuring I at least owed her a chance to talk. We met yesterday at a local coffee shop and ended up talking for almost 4 hours. Despite my initial reservations, Lucia turned out to be genuinely sweet and down to earth. We discovered we have similar interests in technology and gaming, and even share the same bizarre sense of humor. It was strange seeing little mannerisms and expressions that reminded me of Dad. She cried when I told her detailed stories about growing up, about missing school field trips because we couldn't afford them, about working instead of going to prom, about having to drop out of college because of finances. She had no idea about any of it and was furious with Dad for the deception. She told me she had already confronted him about everything she learned from my post. That confrontation apparently led to Dad's latest attempts at damage control. He showed up unannounced at my apartment last night with a check for $100,000, claiming he wanted to make things right. When I refused to accept it, he broke down crying, saying he never meant to hurt me and wanted a chance to fix things. He talked about wanting both his children in his life and how we could be a real family now that everything was in the open. I told him to leave and haven't responded to any of his numerous emails and voicemails since then. He keeps sending long messages about how sorry he is and how much he loves both his children, but all I can think about are the years of lies and abandonment while he played perfect father to Lucia. Lucia and I have exchanged numbers and are cautiously getting to know each other. While I'm still processing my feelings about everything, I don't blame her for Dad's choices. But I'm nowhere near ready to forgive him, regardless of how much money he throws at the situation now. Update 2: Just when I thought this situation couldn't get more twisted, everything has exploded in ways I never imagined. Lucia and I had been talking regularly over the past few weeks, trying to piece together the timeline of Dad's lies. Some things weren't adding up about his supposed business trips and financial situation, so Lucia hired a private investigator to look into it. What the pie uncovered was staggering. Dad has a third family we knew nothing about. Another daughter, Emma, 15F, living in Colorado with her mother. The pie found regular monthly payments to a woman named Rebecca dating back 16 years, plus school records and social media photos showing Dad with another teenage daughter who looks exactly like him. The pie also uncovered years of financial records showing Dad maintained 3 completely separate lives. He had different credit cards and bank accounts for each family, carefully managing his schedule to spend time with each one without raising suspicion. He would tell Lucia and her mom he was on business trips while visiting Emma and Rebecca, then tell them he was at conferences while visiting me or Lucia. When Lucia confronted him with the evidence, Dad initially tried denying it but finally broke down and admitted everything. He's been maintaining 3 separate households for years, lying to everyone about his whereabouts and finances. Emma and Rebecca had no idea about Lucia or me either. Dad had told them the same lies about having to travel frequently for work. But here's where it gets even worse. The pie discovered Dad didn't actually retire last year like he claimed. He was fired from his executive position at his company for embezzlement. He had been stealing company funds for years through fake vendor accounts and inflated expense reports to support his multiple secret families. His supposedly modest retirement savings were actually stolen money he had managed to hide before getting caught. This explains how he afforded everything while claiming poverty to reduce my child support. He wasn't struggling financially at all. He was stealing millions from his employer to fund his 3 separate lives. The company had started an internal investigation last year after finding financial irregularities, which led to his termination. He covered it up by claiming he chose to retire for health reasons. Now that his fraud has been exposed and the money supply has dried up, he's desperately trying to maintain relationships with his children. He's been sending increasingly frantic messages to both Lucia and me, talking about family loyalty and forgiveness. He even tried guilt-tripping Lucia about the private investigator, saying she betrayed him by digging into his private life. Lucia shared all the pie's findings with me and Emma's mom Rebecca. Rebecca was completely blindsided. Dad had told her he was a widower when they met. She had no idea he had 2 other families he was supporting with stolen money. She's devastated and has cut off all contact with him, though she said Emma is struggling to process everything. The company Dad worked for is now conducting a full criminal investigation into the embezzlement. Lucia and I have both been contacted by corporate investigators and have turned over all the financial records and emails we have. Mom's lawyer says this new evidence of fraud significantly strengthens her case for retroactive child support since Dad was clearly lying about his financial situation for years. Some extended family are still trying to defend Dad, saying he must have been under tremendous pressure trying to support 3 families. Others suggest he might have mental health issues that drove him to create these separate lives. But Lucia and I have both cut contact completely. The level of calculation and deception required to maintain this scheme for so many years shows this wasn't just poor judgment, it was deliberate and sustained fraud. Dad's been sending messages through every possible channel begging us not to cooperate with the investigation, claiming it will ruin his life if we turn over evidence. He's trying to convince us that he only did it all for his children, that everything he stole was to give us better lives. But Lucia and I both agree, we're done covering for his lies. We've provided everything we have to the investigators and are prepared to testify if needed. The strangest part of all this is that through this horrible situation, Lucia and I have actually grown closer. We talk almost daily now, supporting each other as we deal with the fallout of Dad's deception. We're both angry and hurt, but at least we have each other to lean on through this mess. Update 3: The final chapter of this nightmare has played out. Dad was arrested last week after a lengthy investigation. He's facing multiple felony charges for embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. The investigators found he had stolen over $2 million from his company over 15 years through an elaborate scheme of fake vendors, inflated expenses, and hidden accounts. The details that came out during the investigation were shocking. Dad had created a network of shell companies to funnel money through, using fake invoices and doctored expense reports. He maintained separate phones, email accounts, and even fake business cards for his different identities. The level of planning that went into maintaining this deception is almost unbelievable. The company's forensic audit revealed he had been stealing steadily larger amounts each year to keep up with the increasing expenses of 3 families. Private schools, luxury vacations, cars, houses, it all added up to millions. He even had separate life insurance policies listing each family as beneficiaries, each unaware of the other's existence. Dad's lawyer reached out to Lucia and me last week, asking us to write character witness statements for his sentencing hearing. He's hoping for leniency by showing he only stole to support his children. We both refused. The lawyer tried guilt-tripping us, saying Dad is facing 15 to 20 years in prison and needs his children's support. But we've had enough of the manipulation. Rebecca and Emma have also cut all contact. Emma initially struggled with the revelation, but after learning the full scope of Dad's crimes, she wants nothing to do with him. Rebecca is focused on protecting Emma's college fund, which might be seized as proceeds of crime. Lucia and I have both reached out to offer support, but they're not ready for contact with us yet. The only positive outcome from this mess is the genuine sibling relationship Lucia and I have developed. We've helped each other process the anger and betrayal, sharing stories and realizing how Dad manipulated us all differently. We try to meet for dinner weekly now and are slowly building the kind of sibling bond we should have had all along. Mom's lawsuit for retroactive child support was successful. The judge ordered Dad to pay substantial back support plus penalties from his remaining assets. Most of that money is frozen or will be seized by authorities, but Mom feels vindicated after years of being gaslit about Dad's finances. She's finally been able to let go of the guilt she carried for not being able to provide more for me growing up. Extended family members keep pushing us to forgive Dad, saying he's still our father and facing serious prison time. Some have even suggested we help him financially with legal fees. But Lucia and I both agree, we're done. His choices destroyed 3 families, traumatized his children, and hurt countless others through his crimes. The fact that he's still trying to manipulate us through his lawyer shows he hasn't really changed. I've started therapy to process everything, and it's helping me understand that none of this was my fault. I didn't cause Dad's absence by being somehow unworthy of his love. He made deliberate choices to create and maintain multiple secret lives. Lucia and I are focusing on healing and moving forward with our new sibling relationship, leaving Dad and his web of lies in the past where they belong. For those asking, no, I don't regret exposing everything, even though it led to Dad's arrest. His crimes would have come to light eventually, and his choices are what landed him in this situation, not his children's refusal to keep lying for him.